This is a fictional romantic story created for entertainment purposes only. All characters, events, and situations are purely imaginary. One room, one bed, and those words from his lips sealed something between us that neither of us expected. I should have demanded another option. I should have slept in the hallway, in the car, anywhere but next to him. Instead, I stayed. And by morning, nothing would ever be the same. My name is Elena Vasquez, and this is the story of the night a hurricane trapped me with my boss, the most powerful and dangerous man in the city, and how I discovered that some storms don't destroy you. They deliver you exactly where you're meant to be. Before we dive in, I need your help with something. I'm on a mission to reach 10,000 subscribers, and every single one of you brings me closer to that dream. If you love stories about forbidden love, dangerous men with hidden hearts, and nights that change everything, hit that subscribe button right now. And drop a comment telling me where you're listening from. I love knowing how far these stories travel. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. It started with an email that would change the entire trajectory of my life, though I didn't know it at the time. I was sitting at my desk on the 42nd floor of Moretti Holdings, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across my computer screen, when the notification popped up. My supervisor, Harrison, had sent a message marked urgent, and my stomach tightened before I even opened it. Elena, Mr. Moretti needs the Castellano contracts delivered to his private residence tonight. Non-negotiable. I read the words 3 times, hoping they would somehow rearrange themselves into something less terrifying. Dante Moretti's private residence. At night, during what the Weather Channel was calling the storm of the decade. Everyone in the city knew who Dante Moretti really was. On paper, he was the CEO of Moretti Holdings, a legitimate business empire that spanned real estate, imports, and financial services. But beneath that polished surface was something far more dangerous. The Moretti family had controlled the East Coast for 3 generations, and Dante was the current head of an empire built on power, fear, and absolute loyalty. The kind of man whose name was spoken in whispers. The kind of man who could make problems and people disappear with a single phone call. For the past 8 months, I had been his executive secretary. I answered his calls, managed his calendar, organized his meetings, and pretended I didn't notice the armed men who occasionally walked through our floor with the casual confidence of people who had nothing to fear. I kept my head down and did my job because the pay was excellent, the benefits were unmatched, and I needed both desperately. My mother's medical bills back in Miami weren't going to pay themselves, and this job was the only thing standing between us and financial ruin. But I had rules. Unspoken boundaries that kept me safe. I never stayed late when certain meetings were happening. I never asked questions about the files marked confidential. And I never, ever went to his private residence. Until now. I glanced out the window at the sky, which had turned an angry shade of purple-black. Hurricane Mara had been threatening the coast for days, and now she was finally making her move. The weather alerts on my phone had been screaming warnings all afternoon: seek shelter, avoid travel, prepare for the worst. Every sensible person in the city was either already home or heading there as fast as possible. And Harrison wanted me to drive an hour outside the city to deliver paperwork. I considered refusing. I considered claiming car trouble, illness, a family emergency, but I knew how that would go. Harrison would remind me, in his quietly threatening way, that Mr. Moretti didn't accept excuses, that people who disappointed him tended to find themselves unemployed or worse, and I couldn't afford to lose this job. So I gathered the contracts into a leather folder, grabbed my purse and my keys, and headed for the elevator. The drive started out manageable. Traffic was light, everyone else had the sense to stay off the roads, and the rain was just a steady drizzle as I navigated through the city streets. The GPS directed me onto the highway, then off again onto increasingly narrow roads that wound through suburbs and then into the kind of wealthy, isolated area where mansions hid behind walls and gates and acres of manicured grounds. The further I drove, the worse the storm became. What started as drizzle turned into a downpour, then into something that felt more like driving through a waterfall. My windshield wipers were useless, slapping back and forth at maximum speed, but unable to keep up with the sheets of water pouring from the sky. The wind howled around my small sedan, rocking it like a toy. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white, my heart pounding against my ribs. My phone buzzed with another emergency alert. Seek shelter immediately. Do not travel. Life-threatening conditions. Great timing, I muttered, squinting through the windshield at the road ahead. I could barely see 10 feet in front of me. The GPS insisted I was only 5 minutes from my destination, but those 5 minutes felt like an eternity. Then the lightning started. A massive bolt split the sky directly ahead of me, illuminating the world in stark white light. I screamed, instinctively swerving, and my tires hydroplaned on the flooded road. For one terrifying moment, I had no control. The car was sliding, spinning, completely at the mercy of the water and the wind. I slammed into something, a curb maybe or a guardrail, and the car jerked to a stop. My airbag didn't deploy, thank God, but my seatbelt locked tight against my chest, knocking the breath out of me. For a long moment, I just sat there, gasping, my hands still clenched around the steering wheel. Then I heard it, a horrible grinding sound from somewhere under the hood, followed by a pathetic sputter. The engine coughed twice and died. No, 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 no. I turned the key. Nothing, tried again. The engine made a sound like a dying animal and went silent. I was stranded. I looked around, trying to get my bearings through the rain-lashed windows. And that's when I saw them, massive iron gates, barely visible through the downpour, with a stone wall stretching away on either side. The Moretti estate. I had made it, barely. My car had given up the ghost right at his front gates, like fate had dragged me here and wasn't going to let me leave. I grabbed my purse and the folder of contracts, tucked them under my blazer in a futile attempt to keep them dry, and shoved open the car door. The wind nearly ripped it from my hands. The rain hit me like a physical assault, instantly soaking through my clothes, plastering my hair to my face, filling my shoes. I ran for the gates. There was an intercom mounted on the stone pillar beside them, a sleek, modern panel that looked out of place against the old-world architecture. I pressed the button once, twice, 3 times, my fingers shaking from cold and adrenaline. Static, then silence. I was about to press it again, already calculating how long I could survive out here before hypothermia set in, when a voice crackled through the speaker. Deep male, irritated. "Who is this?" "Mr. Moretti?" I leaned closer to the intercom, shouting to be heard over the wind. "It's Elena Vasquez, from your office. My car broke down on your road, and I have the Castellano contracts. I need help." Silence. Long, agonizing silence. I stood there in the driving rain, waiting, certain he was going to leave me out here to drown. Why would he care about one secretary stranded in a storm? I was nobody to him, an employee he probably didn't even recognize. Then the gates buzzed and slowly began to swing open. I didn't wait to see if it was a trap. I ran. The driveway was long, impossibly long, winding through what must have been beautiful grounds in daylight, but was now just darkness and chaos. Trees bent sideways in the wind. Debris flew past me. The rain was so heavy I could barely see the house until I was almost upon it. And then there it was. Rising out of the storm like something from a Gothic novel, all dark stone and sharp angles and towering windows that glowed with warm light. It wasn't a house. It was a fortress. A castle. The kind of place where dark things happened behind closed doors. The kind of place you entered and never left. I pushed that thought away and stumbled up the front steps, my heels slipping on the wet stone. I nearly fell twice before reaching the massive wooden door. It opened before I could knock. And there he was. Dante Moretti. I had seen him before, of course. You couldn't work on the executive floor of Morty Holdings without catching glimpses of the man who owned it all. But those sightings had always been from a distance, across a conference room, through the glass walls of his office, in the elevator surrounded by his ever-present entourage of dangerous-looking men. I had never been this close to him. He filled the doorway like he was built to block out the rest of the world. Tall, at least 6'3", with broad shoulders and a body that spoke of controlled power, of strength held carefully in check. He was wearing a black Henley that clung to his chest and arms, revealing intricate tattoos that crawled up his forearms and disappeared under his sleeves. His dark hair was pushed back from his face, slightly damp, like he had recently showered. His jaw was sharp enough to cut glass, his cheekbones high and severe, and his eyes, God, his eyes. They were so dark they looked black in the dim light, and they swept over me now with an intensity that made my breath catch. He looked exactly like what he was. Dangerous. Miss Vasquez, his voice was deep and rough, like gravel wrapped in velvet. You shouldn't be out in this. My teeth were chattering so hard I could barely speak. The contracts. Mr. Harrison said you needed them tonight. He said it was non-negotiable. Something flickered in those dark eyes. Annoyance, maybe, or something colder. Harrison sent you into a hurricane, he said slowly, to deliver paperwork. It wasn't a question, but I nodded anyway, hugging the folder against my chest like a shield. Dante's jaw tightened. A muscle jumped beneath his skin. For a moment, I thought he was going to say something that would probably end Harrison's career, if not his life, but instead, he simply stepped aside. Inside, now, before you freeze to death on my doorstep. I didn't argue. I didn't have the strength. The moment I stepped through the door, the chaos of the storm faded to a dull roar. The house wrapped around me like a cocoon, warm air, soft lighting, the faint crackle of a fire somewhere nearby. I stood in the entryway, dripping water everywhere, and tried to take in my surroundings. The foyer was massive. Marble floors stretched toward a grand staircase that curved upward into shadow. The ceilings were impossibly high, with chandeliers that glittered like captured stars. Expensive paintings lined the walls, dark, moody pieces that looked like they belonged in museums. Everything was beautiful and cold and intimidating, more mausoleum than home. Dante closed the door behind me, and the lock clicked into place with a sound that felt strangely final. "Stay here," he said, and disappeared through a doorway. I stood there, shivering violently, water pooling at my feet. My blazer was ruined, plastered to my skin and completely soaked through. My skirt clung to my thighs. My hair hung in wet ropes around my face. I probably looked like a drowned rat who had wandered into the lair of a very dangerous predator. When Dante returned, he was carrying a thick blanket and a glass of amber liquid. "Wrap yourself in this," he said, handing me the blanket, "and drink this. It'll help with the cold." I took the glass and our fingers brushed for just a moment. His skin was warm, mine was frozen. The contrast sent a strange shiver through me that had nothing to do with the temperature. "Bourbon?" I asked, more to fill the silence than anything else. "Good bourbon, drink." I did. The liquid burned a path down my throat, spreading warmth through my chest and into my limbs. I pulled the blanket around my shoulders, already feeling marginally more human. Dante watched me with that unreadable expression, his arms crossed over his chest. He hadn't moved more than a few feet from the door, like he was still deciding whether to let me stay or throw me back out into the storm. "You can't leave tonight," he said finally. My stomach dropped. What? The roads are flooded, trees are down everywhere, the highway is closed. He glanced toward the windows, where the storm was still throwing itself against the glass with furious violence. The worst of the hurricane won't pass until morning, maybe later. I processed this information slowly, my brain still sluggish from cold and shock. Is there someone I could call, a hotel nearby? Dante pulled his phone from his pocket and showed me the screen. No signal, not even a single bar. Cellular towers are down, he said. Landlines too, and the nearest hotel is 40 miles away. Even if your car was working, you wouldn't make it a mile before you drove into a flooded intersection or got hit by falling debris. I stared at him, the reality of my situation settling over me like a weight. So I'm just staying here with you. Something flickered across his face, too fast for me to identify. Unless you'd prefer to take your chances with the hurricane, he said dryly. I swallowed hard. No, I thank you. I appreciate you letting me in. I wasn't going to leave you to drown on my doorstep. He turned toward the staircase. Come, I'll show you where you can sleep. I followed him up the grand staircase, my wet shoes squeaking against the marble with every step. The second floor was a maze of hallways and closed doors, all of them dark except for the occasional flash of lightning through the windows. The house felt even bigger up here, like a labyrinth designed to swallow people whole. Dante walked with the confidence of absolute ownership, never hesitating, never checking over his shoulder to see if I was keeping up. He expected to be followed. He expected to be obeyed. He stopped at a door near the end of the hall and pushed it open. The room inside was beautiful. A king-sized bed with dark silk sheets dominated the center, flanked by heavy antique furniture and floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out onto the storm. A fireplace crackled against the far wall, casting warm, dancing light across the space. This is the guest room, Dante said. The bathroom is through that door. There should be towels, toiletries, everything you need. Relief flooded through me, a door I could close, a bed I could collapse into. Privacy, safety. Thank you, I said, stepping into the room. But Dante didn't leave. He stood in the doorway, his expression darkening, and something in my chest tightened. There's a problem, he said. My heart stuttered. What kind of problem? He stepped into the room, and suddenly the space felt smaller. The air felt thicker. I was acutely aware of how big he was, how much space he occupied, how the firelight played across the hard planes of his face. The storm knocked out power to the East Wing 30 minutes ago, he said. The backup generators are prioritizing the main areas of the house, but most of the bedrooms are without heat, including mine. Okay, I said slowly, not understanding where he was going with this. Dante's dark eyes met mine, and for the first time since I'd arrived, I saw something in them that looked almost like hesitation. This is the only room with a working fireplace, he said, the only room that's still warm. Understanding dawned slowly, like ice water trickling down my spine. One room, he said, his voice low and steady. One bed. The words hung between us, heavy and impossible. I stared at him, my pulse racing. You're serious? I don't joke, Miss Vasquez. There has to be another option, a couch somewhere, the floor, anything. The living room is drafty, and the temperature is already dropping throughout the house. By midnight, anywhere without a working fireplace will be dangerously cold. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. I'm not going to let you freeze to death because of some misplaced sense of propriety. I looked around the room, then back at him. The bed was massive, easily big enough for several people, but still. This is insane, I said. This is survival, he countered. You're soaked, you're cold, and you need to sleep. So do I. The storm howled outside, rattling the windows like it was trying to break through. I could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on me. Trapped in a house with Dante Moretti, with nowhere to go until morning. I took a deep breath, trying to steady the racing of my heart. Fine, I said, but we're keeping a very clear boundary. Your side, my side, no crossing. Something flickered across Dante's face, amusement, respect, maybe both. Whatever you say, Miss Vasquez. He turned and left the room, presumably to give me privacy. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the bed like it was a trap I was willingly walking into. What the hell had I got myself into? When Dante returned, He was carrying a stack of clothes. A plain white t-shirt and a pair of gray sweatpants that looked like they would swallow me whole. "Your clothes need to dry," he said, setting them on the bed. "These should work for now." I took them, surprised by the gesture. "Thank you." He nodded once, a short, efficient movement. "I'll give you a few minutes to change. The bathroom has everything you need." The door closed behind him, and I finally allowed myself to breathe. The bathroom was enormous, all marble and chrome, with a shower that looked like it could fit a small army and a bathtub that was practically a swimming pool. I peeled off my ruined clothes, the blazer that would never recover, the blouse that clung to me like a second skin, the skirt that had ridden up to an embarrassing degree. I hung them over the towel rack to dry, knowing it was probably futile, and changed into the clothes Dante had given me. The t-shirt was enormous. It slipped off one shoulder no matter how many times I adjusted it, the hem falling to mid-thigh. The sweatpants had to be rolled up multiple times just to keep from dragging on the floor. I looked ridiculous, like a child playing dress-up in her father's clothes. But they were warm and dry, and they smelled like him. I caught myself breathing in the scent, clean laundry, something woodsy like cedar or sandalwood, and underneath it all, something darker and more masculine that I couldn't quite identify, and immediately felt ridiculous. "Get it together, Elena." I towel-dried my hair as best I could, finger-combed it into some semblance of order, and steeled myself to face whatever came next. When I opened the bathroom door, Dante was sitting on the edge of the bed, waiting. He had changed 2 different pants, a fresh t-shirt that stretched across his chest in a way that made my mouth go dry. His tattoos were fully visible now, intricate designs that told stories I couldn't read. His eyes swept over me, lingering just a moment too long before flicking back up to my face. "Better," he said. I walked to the opposite side of the bed, keeping as much distance between us as the room allowed. The mattress was huge, California king, at least, with what looked like 1,000 thread-count sheets and more pillows than any one person could possibly need. "Ground rules," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "I stay on my side, you stay on yours. No touching, no talking, no anything." The corner of Dante's mouth twitched. "No talking. Unless absolutely necessary." And what constitutes absolutely necessary? The house being on fire, someone breaking in, a medical emergency. That's a very short list. It's a comprehensive list. He studied me for a moment, something unreadable in his dark eyes. Then he nodded slowly. "Fine, your rules, Miss Vasquez." He stood and walked to his side of the bed, the right side, closest to the door, and pulled back the covers. I did the same on my side, sliding between sheets that were softer than anything I'd ever felt against my skin. For a long moment, we both lay there, staring at the ceiling. The only sounds were the crackling of the fire and the relentless assault of rain against the windows. Thunder rumbled in the distance, low and ominous, but inside this room, everything felt strangely still. The tension was thick enough to choke on. I was acutely aware of him, the weight of his body on the mattress, the sound of his breathing, the heat that seemed to radiate from him even across the distance between us. Every time he shifted, I tensed. Every breath he took, I noticed. This was insane. I was lying in bed with Dante Moretti. The Dante Moretti. The man whose name made powerful people tremble. The man who could end lives with a word. And he was 6 feet away from me, close enough to touch if I stretched out my arm. I closed my eyes and tried to will myself to sleep, but sleep was impossible. My mind was racing, cycling through every possible scenario, every potential disaster. What if he tried something? What if I tried something? What if we both fell asleep and woke up tangled together and everything became impossibly awkward? What if I liked it? That last thought made my eyes snap open, my heart pounding. No, absolutely not. I was not going to develop feelings for my boss, especially not this boss. The danger alone should have been enough to kill any attraction. the power imbalance, the fact that he probably killed people or at least ordered their deaths. But lying there in the darkness, listening to him breathe, I couldn't deny that there was something. A pull, a curiosity, a reckless part of me that wanted to know what it would feel like to be closer. Get a grip, Elena. The minutes stretched into what felt like hours. The storm continued its assault on the house, but the room stayed warm, the fire crackling softly. Eventually, exhaustion began to win its battle against anxiety. My eyelids grew heavy. My thoughts started to blur at the edges. I was just starting to drift off when Dante's voice cut through the darkness. "Why do you work for me?" My eyes opened. I turned my head to look at him, but he was still staring at the ceiling, his profile sharp in the firelight. "Excuse me." "You heard me." His voice was quiet but direct. "You know what I am, what this company really is, what I really am, why stay?" The question caught me off guard. It wasn't something I'd ever let myself think about too deeply. The moral implications of my employment, the complicity that came with my silence. "The pay is good," I said finally. "The benefits are excellent, and I need the job." "That's not a real answer." "It's the truth." Dante turned his head, and his dark eyes locked onto mine. In the dim light of the fire, they looked almost black, deep, and fathomless, like looking into a void. "Most people can't wait to get away from me," he said. "But you've been my secretary for 8 months, and you've never once looked at me with fear." My heart skipped. Should I be afraid of you? He was quiet for a long moment, so long that I thought he might not answer at all. "Yes," he said finally, "you should be." "Why?" "Because I'm dangerous, Miss Vasquez, because people who get close to me tend to get hurt." His jaw tightened, the muscle jumping beneath his skin, or worse. So much for the no-talking rule. I should have been afraid then. I should have retreated to my side of the bed and counted the minutes until morning. I should have remembered all the rumors, all the whispers, all the reasons why smart people kept their distance from men like him. But lying there in the darkness, looking at the man the world feared, I didn't feel fear. I felt curiosity. "What if I don't want to be afraid?" I asked softly. Something shifted in Dante's expression. Surprise, maybe, or something deeper, something he wasn't used to showing. "Then you're either very brave," he said, "or very foolish." "Maybe I'm both." The corner of his mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but the closest thing to one I'd ever seen from him. "Maybe you are." Neither of us spoke for a while after that, but the silence felt different now, less tense, more thoughtful. Like we'd crossed some invisible line and couldn't go back to pretending we were just boss and employee trapped in an awkward situation. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, hyper-aware of the man beside me. The fire had died down to glowing embers, casting long shadows across the room. Outside, the storm continued its fury, but inside this bubble, everything felt strangely intimate. "Can I ask you something?" I said finally, emboldened by the darkness. "You just did." "Something else." Dante shifted, turning onto his side to face me. The distance between us seemed to shrink, though neither of us had moved closer. "Ask." "Why do you push everyone away?" His expression hardened immediately, walls slamming into place. For a moment, I thought he wouldn't answer, that I'd pushed too far, asked too much. "Because it's safer that way," he said finally, his voice flat. "Safer for who?" "For them." There was something raw in his voice, something that made my chest ache. "You really believe that?" I asked. "That keeping people at a distance protects them?" "I don't believe it, I know it." His eyes searched mine, dark and intense. "Everyone I've ever let in has paid a price for it. My father, my brother. He stopped abruptly, his jaw clenching. "You're what?" "It doesn't matter." He turned onto his back again, shutting me out. "Go to sleep, Miss Vasquez." But I couldn't let it go. Not now, not when I'd seen something real beneath all that armor. "Dante." His name on my lips felt foreign, dangerous, intimate in a way that made my heart race. He went very still. "What?" His voice was rough. "You're not responsible for everyone else's choices." A harsh laugh escaped him, bitter, humorless. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Maybe not," I admitted, "but I know that pushing people away isn't protecting them. It's just making sure you suffer alone." The silence that followed was deafening. Then, so quietly I almost missed it, Dante said, "Maybe suffering alone is what I deserve." My heart cracked. I thought about all the rumors I'd heard, the violence, the ruthlessness, the blood on his hands. I thought about the men with guns who walked through our office, the files marked confidential, the way people lowered their eyes when he passed. And then I thought about this moment. This man, lying beside me in the darkness, believing he deserved to be alone. "No one deserves that," I whispered, "not even you." He didn't respond, but I saw his hand clench in the sheets, saw the muscle jump in his jaw. I'd touched something he kept buried, something he didn't want anyone to see. "Good night, Miss Vasquez," he said, his tone final. I turned onto my side, facing away from him, my mind racing. Sleep didn't come for a long time. When I finally drifted off, my dreams were filled with dark eyes and whispered confessions and the feeling of standing at the edge of a precipice, knowing that if I stepped forward, there would be no going back. I woke to darkness and the sensation of warmth against my back. For a disoriented moment, I didn't understand what was happening. The fire had died completely, leaving the room lit only by occasional flashes of lightning. The storm was still raging outside, though it sounded slightly less violent than before. Then I felt it. A body pressed against mine, an arm draped over my waist, breath warm against my hair. At some point during the night, we had drifted together. Dante's chest was pressed against my back, his arm wrapped around me, his body curved around mine like he was trying to shield me from something. I should have moved, should have slipped out of his embrace and put distance between us. But I didn't. Instead, I lay there, feeling the steady rise and fall of his chest, the weight of his arm around me. It felt safe, protected, like being wrapped in a cocoon of warmth and strength. It felt like something I hadn't known I was missing. Then Dante stirred. I felt the exact moment he woke up, his body tensing, his breath catching, his arm tightening reflexively around me before he seemed to realize what he was doing. "Elena," my name was rough on his lips, sleep-scratched and surprised. I didn't mean. "It's okay," I whispered. "I should move." "You don't have to." Silence. His arm stayed where it was. I could feel his heart beating against mine. Back faster now, no longer the slow rhythm of sleep. "This is a bad idea," he said quietly. "Probably. You work for me." "I know. And I'm dangerous, I know that too." His hand flexed against my stomach, pulling me just slightly closer. The heat of him seeped through the thin fabric of the t-shirt, warming me in ways that had nothing to do with temperature. "Then why aren't you running?" he asked. I turned in his arms, facing him. In the faint glow of lightning through the windows, I could see the conflict in his eyes, the wanting and the fear, battling for dominance. "Because some things are worth the risk," I said. Dante stared at me, his dark eyes searching mine like he was looking for something, a lie, maybe, or a motive he could understand. "You should run," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe," I agreed, "but I'm not going to." Something broke behind his eyes. And then he kissed me. The kiss wasn't gentle. It was desperate and hungry, like he'd been holding back for months, years, and finally couldn't anymore. His hands tangled in my hair, pulling me closer, and I melted into him like I'd been waiting my whole life for this moment. He tasted like bourbon and something darker, something forbidden. My hands found his chest, feeling the hard muscle beneath the thin fabric of his shirt. His heart was racing. I could feel it pounding against my palm, matching the frantic rhythm of my own. His mouth moved against mine, demanding and giving in equal measure. His tongue swept across my lower lip, and I opened for him without hesitation, letting him in, wanting more. When he finally pulled back, we were both breathing hard, our foreheads pressed together. "This is a mistake," he said, but his hands were still in my hair, still holding me close. "I don't care. Elena." "I don't care," I repeated, my voice stronger now. "Do you?" His eyes searched mine, and I saw the war raging inside him. The part of him that wanted to protect me from himself, and the part that wanted me too much to let go. "No," he said finally. "God help me, but no." He kissed me again, slower this time, deeper, like he was memorizing the feel of me, committing every moment to memory. His hands slid down my sides, leaving trails of fire in their wake. They settled on my hips, pulling me closer until there was no space left between us. I could feel every hard line of his body against mine, every inch of controlled power held carefully in check. "We should stop," he murmured against my lips. "Do you want to?" A pause, a ragged breath. "No." "Then don't." He pulled back slightly, his forehead resting against mine, his eyes closed like he was fighting some internal battle. "If we do this," he said, "there's no going back. You understand that?" I looked into his dark eyes and saw everything he was trying to tell me. The danger, the complications, the world he lived in that would never let him be truly free. "I understand," I said. "And you still want this." I cupped his face in my hands, feeling the rough stubble against my palms. "I want you, Dante, all of you, even the parts you think are too dark to love." Something shattered in his expression, walls crumbling, defenses falling. "Elena," he breathed, my name like a prayer on his lips. And then there were no more words. His mouth found mine again, and this time there was no hesitation, no holding back. He kissed me like he was drowning and I was oxygen. His hands explored my body with reverent urgency, learning every curve, every hollow, every inch of skin. I gave as good as I got, my fingers tracing the lines of his tattoos, feeling the stories inked into his skin. He shuddered when I touched him, like he'd never been touched with gentleness before, like tenderness was a foreign language he was only now learning. We moved together in the darkness, the storm raging outside but meaningless compared to the storm between us. The world contracted to this room, this bed, this moment. Everything else fell away. When I finally fell asleep, wrapped in his arms with my head on his chest, I knew that nothing would ever be the same. And I wasn't afraid. I woke to sunlight. Real sunlight, not the weak, storm-filtered gray of the night before, but actual golden light streaming through the windows like a benediction. The storm had passed. I stretched, my body pleasantly sore in ways I wasn't used to, and reached across the bed. Empty. Dante's side was cold, like he'd been gone for a while. But the pillow still held the indent of his head, and when I pressed my face to it, I could smell him, that intoxicating mix of cedar and sandalwood and something uniquely him. For a moment, panic gripped me. Had he regretted it? Was he already figuring out how to fire me without making things awkward? Would I walk downstairs to find a car waiting to take me away, never to return? Then I smelled the coffee and heard the sound of someone moving in the kitchen below. I climbed out of bed, grabbing his shirt from where it had ended up on the floor. It still smelled like both of us now, a combination that made my heart do strange things. I pulled it over my head, not bothering with the sweatpants, and padded downstairs on bare feet. The house looked different in the daylight. Less intimidating. More lived in. I noticed details I'd been too cold and terrified to see the night before: a stack of dog-eared books on a side table, a piano in the corner with sheet music scattered across it, a photograph on the mantel of two young boys with their arms around each other. I found Dante in the kitchen. He was standing by the window, looking out at the storm-ravaged grounds, a mug of coffee in his hand. He was wearing jeans and a gray t-shirt that stretched across his shoulders, and his hair was still mussed from sleep. He looked almost normal, human. He turned when he heard me approach, and something in his expression softened. "Good morning," he said. "Good morning." We stood there for a moment, neither of us sure what to say. Everything had changed between us, but we hadn't figured out how to navigate the new landscape yet. "Coffee," he offered. "Please." He poured me a cup and handed it to me, his fingers brushing mine. The touch sent a shiver down my spine. "About last night," he began. "Do you regret it?" The question came out sharper than I intended, but I needed to know. Dante set his mug down and crossed the distance between us. He cupped my face in his hands, tilting it up to meet his eyes. "No," he said, "I should, but I don't." Relief flooded through me. "Neither do I." He kissed me softly, just a brush of lips. "Good." We spent the morning on the back porch, surveying the aftermath of the storm. Trees were down everywhere, their massive trunks blocking paths and crushing flower beds. Debris littered the lawn, branches, leaves, shingles from some distant outbuilding. The swimming pool was filled with detritus. But the sky was a perfect, innocent blue, and the air smelled fresh and clean. "So what happens now?" I asked, cradling my second cup of coffee. Dante was quiet for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the destruction before us. "I don't know," he admitted. "I've never done this before." "Done what?" Had a secretary stay over. "During a hurricane." The corner of his mouth twitched. "Let someone in." I set my coffee down and turned to face him fully. "Why me? You barely know me." He studied me, his dark eyes thoughtful. "You're different," he said finally. "You look at me and you don't see the rumors or the reputation, you just see me." "Is that a bad thing?" "No." He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, his touch achingly gentle. "It's terrifying, but it's not bad." I leaned into his hand. "I meant what I said last night. I'm not afraid of who you are." "You should be." "Maybe, but I'm not." Dante pulled me closer, tucking me against his side. I fit there perfectly, like I'd been designed to occupy that exact space. "This life I lead," he said quietly, "it's not safe. There are people who would hurt you just to get to me. I have enemies, Elena, powerful ones." "I know. And you still want this." I looked up at him. This man the world feared, this man who held me like I was something precious. "I want you," I said, "whatever that means, whatever it costs." His arms tightened around me. "Then I'm done fighting it," he said. "I'm done pretending I don't want you in my life." "Good, because I wasn't going to let you push me away anyway." He laughed, a real laugh, surprised and warm, and the sound of it made my heart soar. "Stubborn," he said. "You say that like it's a bad thing." "It's not." He pressed a kiss to my forehead. "It might be my favorite thing about you." We stayed on that porch for hours, talking about everything and nothing. He told me about his childhood, his brother Marco, who had died when they were teenagers, his father, who had raised him to lead an empire he'd never wanted, the weight of expectation that had been placed on his shoulders before he was old enough to understand what it meant. I told him about my mother in Miami, her health issues, the medical bills that had driven me to take any job that paid well enough to cover them. I told him about my dreams of opening a restaurant someday, about the recipes I'd inherited from my grandmother, about the life I'd put on hold when reality came crashing down. It was easy in a way I hadn't expected, like we'd known each other for years instead of hours. By the time the afternoon sun started to fade, I realized something had fundamentally shifted between us. The walls he'd built were still there, but they were lower now. And I was on the inside. "I should probably get you back to the city," Dante said eventually, though he didn't sound like he wanted to. "Probably," I agreed, though I didn't want to go either. He stood, offering me his hand. I took it, letting him pull me to my feet. "But before we go," he said, his voice low, "I need you to understand something." I looked up at him, waiting. "This," he said, gesturing between us, "it's dangerous. People in my world don't get happy endings. Then we'll make our own." His eyes softened, and he pulled me into his arms, holding me close. "You're something else, Elena Vasquez. So are you, Dante Moretti." He drove me back to the city himself. His car was sleek and black and expensive, the kind of car that cost more than most people's houses. The seats were heated, the leather buttersoft, and the engine purred like a contented cat. When my hand rested on the center console, his covered it automatically, like it was the most natural thing in the world. We didn't talk much during the drive. We didn't need to. When we pulled up in front of my apartment building, a modest walk-up in a neighborhood that was charitably described as up and coming, neither of us moved. "I'll call you tonight," he said. "Will you?" He turned to look at me, his expression serious. "I'm not good at this," he admitted. "Relationships, feelings, any of it. I've spent most of my life keeping people at arm's length. But for you," he exhaled, "for you, I want to try." I leaned over and kissed him, pouring everything I felt into it. "That's all I'm asking," I whispered against his lips. "Just try." "I will." I opened the door, but paused before stepping out. "Dante." "Yeah." "Last night, it wasn't a mistake." His eyes held mine for a long moment, then he nodded. "No, it wasn't." I climbed out of the car and watched him drive away, his taillights disappearing around the corner. When I got upstairs, I realized I was still wearing his shirt. I didn't take it off for the rest of the day. The next 2 weeks were the most surreal of my life. Dante called every night, just like he'd promised. Sometimes we talked for hours, about our days, our pasts, our hopes for the future. Sometimes just for a few minutes, when his life pulled him in 100 different directions at once. But he always called. He showed up at my apartment at random hours, usually late at night, always with takeout. Containers from restaurants I couldn't afford or bottles of wine that probably cost more than my rent. We'd eat sitting on my tiny couch, our legs tangled together, and talk until one or both of us fell asleep. At work, we were careful, professional. I still answered his calls and managed his calendar, but now there were stolen glances across the conference room. Notes left on my desk that made me blush. Moments in the elevator when his hand would find the small of my back, just for a second, just enough to remind me of everything we were hiding. It was exhilarating and terrifying. Because the more time I spent with Dante, the more I understood the danger he'd warned me about. The meetings that ran late and left him with blood on his knuckles. The phone calls he took in other rooms, coming back with shadows in his eyes. The men with guns who nodded to him with respect that bordered on fear. He was a king in a world built on violence, and I was falling in love with him anyway. 3 weeks after the storm, he brought me back to his house. It looked different now. The grounds had been cleared of debris, the gardens replanted, the damage repaired. In daylight, without the terror of the hurricane, the estate was beautiful, imposing, yes, but also strangely welcoming. "I wanted you to see it properly," Dante said as we walked through the front door, "not as a refugee fleeing a storm." I looked around at the marble floors, the soaring ceilings, the artwork and antiques and evidence of generational wealth. "It's beautiful," I said honestly. "It's a prison," he countered, "or it was, until recently." I looked up at him. What changed? He cupped my face in his hands, his thumbs brushing my cheekbones. "You." That night, he cooked dinner for me. Dante Moretti, feared MAFIA boss, stood in his gourmet kitchen in a t-shirt and jeans, stirring pasta like it was the most natural thing in the world. "You're staring," he said without looking up. "I can't help it." He glanced at me, a small smile playing at his lips. "You're going to give me a complex." "Good." We ate on the couch in the living room, plates balanced on our laps, the fire crackling in the background. It was simple and comfortable and perfect. After dinner, he pulled me close, his arm draped around my shoulders. I rested my head against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. "I never thought I'd have this," he said. Quietly. "Have what?" "This," he gestured vaguely. "Someone to come home to, someone who sees all of me and doesn't run." My chest tightened. "I'm not going anywhere, Dante." He looked down at me, his eyes filled with something that looked a lot like hope. "Promise. Promise." He kissed me then, slow and deep. And I knew in that moment that I would keep that promise no matter what came next. A few days later, everything changed. I was at work, at my desk outside Dante's office, reviewing his schedule for the week when two men I'd never seen before walked through the lobby. They moved with purpose, their eyes scanning the room until they landed on me. They were wearing expensive suits, but there was something wrong about them, something predatory in their movements, something cold in their eyes. My blood ran cold. "Miss Vasquez," one of them said, stopping in front of my desk. He had slicked back hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You need to come with us." I kept my voice steady, though my heart was pounding. "I'm sorry, who are you?" "Friends of Mr. Morty. He sent us to collect you." Something felt wrong. The way they said his name, the look they exchanged. "I'll wait for Mr. Morty to contact me directly," I said, reaching casually for my phone. The man's hand shot out, covering mine, stopping me. "I'm afraid that's not an option." Fear surged through me, but before I could scream or fight or do anything at all, the elevator doors opened. Dante stepped out. His eyes swept the room in an instant, taking in the scene, the two men, their proximity to my desk, the hand still covering mine. His expression went ice cold. "Step away from her," his voice was quiet, deadly. The men turned, and I saw recognition flash across their faces. Fear, too. "Mr. Morty," the first one said smoothly, recovering quickly. "We were just." "I know exactly what you were just." Dante walked toward us, every line of his body radiating controlled violence. "And if you don't remove your hand from my secretary in the next 3 seconds, I will remove it for you. Permanently." The man let go. Dante stepped between us, shielding me with his body. I could see the tension in his shoulders, the barely contained rage in every muscle. "Tell Carrero," he said, his voice low and lethal, "that if he wants to talk to me, he can pick up a phone. If he comes near anyone in my life again, there won't be a conversation, just consequences." The men exchanged glances. Something passed between them, a calculation, a decision. Then, without another word, they turned and left. The moment they were gone, Dante spun to face me. "Are you okay?" His hands ran over my arms, my shoulders, checking for damage. "I'm fine," my voice shook. "Who were they?" His jaw tightened. "A rival family. They've been trying to find leverage against me for months." "And I'm leverage." The look he gave me made my heart stop. "You're not leverage," he said fiercely. "You're everything, which is why I need to get you somewhere safe. Now." He took me to a house I didn't know he owned. A beautiful brownstone in a quiet neighborhood, with security cameras on every corner and armed men posted at every entrance. "You'll stay here until this is handled," he said, pacing the living room like a caged animal. "Dante." I should have been more careful. I knew this would happen. I knew if anyone found out about you, they'd use you against me. I should have. "Dante," I caught his arm, stopping him mid-stride. "This isn't your fault." "Yes, it is." His eyes were wild, almost desperate. "I knew the risk, and I let you in anyway. I was selfish. I wanted you so badly that I ignored every warning, every instinct telling me to stay away." "Then I'm glad you did." I cupped his face, forcing him to look at me. "I don't regret any of this. Do you understand me? Not a single moment." "Elena." "Whatever happens, whatever comes next, I chose this. I chose you." Something cracked in his expression. The walls he'd been rebuilding crumbled all over again. "I love you," he said. The words hit me like a wave. "What?" "I love you." His voice was rough, almost broken. "I tried not to, God knows I tried, but I love you, Elena, and I will burn this entire city down before I let anyone hurt you." Tears streamed down my face. "I love you too," I whispered. He kissed me then, fierce and tender all at once, and I knew that whatever came next, we would face it together. The next 48 hours were the longest of my life. Dante disappeared for stretches of time, returning with blood on his knuckles and fire in his eyes. He didn't tell me the details, and I didn't ask. Some things I was learning I didn't need to know. But I saw the toll it took on him, the shadows under his eyes, the tension that never left his shoulders, the way he held me at night like he was afraid I'd disappear if he let go. Armed men patrolled the brownstone around the clock. Every window was monitored. Every door was reinforced. I was safe, objectively, but I'd never felt more trapped. On the second night, I woke to find Dante sitting on the edge of the bed, his head in his hands. "Hey," I said softly, sitting up beside him. "What's wrong?" He didn't answer for a long moment. Then he looked up at me, and his eyes were raw with something I couldn't name. "I almost lost you," he said. "They came to your desk, in broad daylight, in my own building." His hands clenched into fists. "If I had been 5 minutes later." "But you weren't." I took his hands in mine, uncurling his fingers, lacing them with my own. "You were there, I'm here, we're both okay." This time, his voice was bitter. "But what about next time? What about the time after that? As long as you're with me, you'll be a target." I heard what he wasn't saying, the question he was too afraid to ask. "Don't," I said quietly. "Don't what?" "Don't push me away because you're scared. Don't decide what's best for me without asking what I want. What you want could get you killed. Then that's my choice to make." I lifted his hands to my lips and kissed his knuckles. "I'm not leaving you, Dante. Not now. Not ever. So you can either waste time trying to push me away, or you can focus on ending this so we can have a future. Together." He stared at me for a long moment. Then, slowly, the tension drained from his shoulders. "How did I get so lucky?" he murmured. "I ask myself the same thing every day." He pulled me into his arms and held me until dawn. On the third day, Dante walked through the front door looking lighter than I'd ever seen him. I was sitting in the living room, trying and failing to focus on a book, when I heard his footsteps in the hall. I stood as he entered, searching his face for any sign of injury, any indication of what had happened. He was tired, exhausted, really, but there was something different in his eyes, something that looked almost like peace. "It's done," he said. "Done. Carrero is finished. His operation, his men, all of it." He crossed the room and took my hands in his. "They won't be coming after you or anyone else ever again." Relief crashed over me like a wave. I threw myself into his arms, holding him so tightly I thought I might break. "Are you okay?" I asked. Against his chest. "I'm fine." He pulled me closer, burying his face in my hair. "I'm better than fine. I'm here with you and you're safe." "We're safe," I corrected. He pulled back slightly, looking down at me with something like wonder. "We're safe," he agreed. That night, we lay in bed together in the brownstone, the moonlight streaming through the windows. The world outside was still dangerous. There would always be enemies, always be threats, always be the weight of Dante's empire pressing down on him. But in that moment, none of it mattered. We were together. "I meant what I said," Dante murmured against my hair. "I love you, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving it." "The rest of your life is a long time." "Not long enough," he kissed my shoulder. "Move in with me." I lifted my head, staring at him. "What?" "Move in with me, into the estate. I'll get rid of the cold furniture, hire a decorator, whatever you want, just be there with me every day." "Dante." I know it's fast, I know it's crazy, but I've spent my whole life being careful, being cautious, keeping everyone at arm's length. And where did it get me? Alone in a house that felt like a mausoleum. He took my hand, pressing it against his heart. You changed that. You changed me, and I don't want to waste another day pretending I don't need you. I looked at this man, this dangerous, beautiful, broken man who had become my entire world. Yes, I said. Yes. Yes, I'll move in with you. His smile was blinding. He pulled me on top of him and kissed me breathless. I love you, he said between kisses. I love you too. I'm going to marry you someday, you know. I pulled back, staring down at him. Is that a proposal? Not yet. He tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, his eyes soft. When I propose, you'll know, I'm going to do it right. Flowers, candles, a ring that costs more than most people's cars. I laughed. I don't need any of that. I know, but I want to give it to you anyway. He pulled me back down, pressing a kiss to my forehead. I want to give you everything, Elena, the world, the moon, whatever you want. I just want you. You have me, his arms tightened around me, always. And as the night wrapped around us like a blanket, I knew that he meant it. Some storms destroy everything in their path. They tear down buildings and uproot trees and leave nothing but devastation in there. Wake. But some storms bring you exactly where you're meant to be. Hurricane Mara brought me to Dante Moretti. A broken assignment on a terrible night led me to the front door of a man the world told me to fear, and instead of running, I stayed. I stayed through the darkness and the danger, through the secrets and the shadows, through the blood and the violence and the impossibility of loving someone like him. And in the end, I found something I never expected. Home. Not a building or an address, not the brownstone or the estate or my tiny apartment in the city. Home was his arms around me in the darkness. Home was his voice on the phone at midnight. Home was the way he looked at me like I was the only thing in the world that mattered. Home was him, and I was never leaving. So that's my story. That's how a hurricane trapped me with Dante Moretti, how one bed became a turning point, and how the most dangerous man I'd ever met became the love of my life. Was it crazy? Probably. Was it risky? Absolutely. Would I do it again? In a heartbeat? Because sometimes, the things that scare us the most are the things most worth fighting for. And sometimes, the man the world tells you to fear is the one who makes you feel safest of all. Now I want to hear from you. Do you believe in love that breaks all the rules? Would you take a chance on someone the world said was dangerous, or would you play it safe? Drop a comment and tell me your answer. I read every single one. And if this story made you feel something, if it made your heart race, or your eyes water, or your soul believe in impossible love, hit that subscribe button right now. Share this with someone who needs to believe that happy endings exist, even in the darkest circumstances. Because at the end of the day, we're all just looking for someone who sees us, really sees us, and loves us anyway. Dante Moretti was supposed to be my boss, nothing more. He became my forever. So tell me, what would you risk for love? I'll be waiting in the comments. And who knows, maybe your story will inspire the next one I tell. Thank you for listening to mine.